Today on an all-new Dr. Phil.
I spent most of my early childhood locked up in a cage.
11 children.
There was food deprivation. One child was eating wood.
Adopted by this couple.
They were treating these kids as less than animals.
Survived a house of horrors.
You said you were held underwater at times.
You take kids, lock them in cages. What type of person are you? Are you human?
Plus,
I miss my sister.
You don't have to miss Abba because she's here.
an emotional reunion.
Abba, is that really you?
In 2005, authorities removed 11 children ranging from ages 1 to 14 from the home of this couple, Michael and Sharon Gravel. Law enforcement working on a tip discovered their adopted and foster children living in conditions which included being kept in stacked cages, averaging 30 inches high, 40 inches wide, and only 40 inches deep. Now, at the time, the Gravels reportedly said they built enclosures to protect their special needs children from themselves and each other, and they denied abusing them. However, they were eventually convicted of 4 felony counts of child endangering, 2 misdemeanor counts of child endangering, and 5 misdemeanor counts of child abuse. But get this, they only spent 2 years in prison. The sentence was perceived as light by many people, including some of the victims. Now, Simon was one of the children rescued at age 8 and says to this very day he still holds memories that he cannot let go, which he claims include being beaten, holding him underwater until he felt like he was drowning, and sleeping in one of the cold bottom cages that was wired with an alarm to prevent him from escaping. Here's Simon's story.
Most people, when they talk about their childhood, a lot of times they talk about these great memories. My childhood was far from that. I feel like I survived a nightmare filled with torture and abuse. The worst part is we were all treated like animals. I spent most of my early childhood locked up in a cage. Almost all the kids in the house had a cage. Every cage had an alarm on it. Everybody was forced to sleep in their cage. During the day, most of the kids were allowed out of the cage except me. I wasn't allowed out of the cage very much because they didn't like me. The best way to describe the cage was it was a structure of torture. All of the cages were made of wood and painted bright colors. Living in a cage, it was scary because it was all dark. We slept on hardwood. We didn't sleep on mattresses. My cage was about this wide, this tall. There was all this wire around the cages. I remember once trying to rip the wire off. Sometimes my adopted parents, Sharon and Michael, would give some of the siblings blankets. I was the only one that never got a blanket. I remember laying there like this, sitting there like this, just looking. Sitting in that cage, I felt like a person that didn't belong in the world, a person that was meant to be tortured. There were some times where I even felt like I deserved it. My adoptive parents were white, and I feel like the reason why we were kept in cages is because they're racist abusers. They absolutely knew what they were doing. What they did to us, it was beyond wrong and cruel. I can't even put my head around what they did.
Well, Simon, I'm glad to meet you. This is not a fun story to talk about. It's a painful memory for you. But this is something that, to this very day, haunts you memory-wise and in terms of how you see people and go through the world, true?
Yes.
Why do you think these people did this?
They say because we were harmed to ourselves, to protect us from ourselves. But I feel like they were racist abusers and they didn't like black folks.
We're talking about 11 children here.
Yeah.
Do you know why they had so many children?
They thought that they could be foster parents, and they were totally different.
Was it for the money?
It was
I
mostly
mean, you know,
for the
foster
money.
parents get
Mostly
funds.
for the money.
Were they kind to you at any time? Were they ever nurturant with
When
you?
they were in a good mood, they would let us out our cages. They would take us outside. And after that, they would bring us back inside. They would cook us a meal, sit us down at the table, act like we're a family. We don't know each other. We are scared.
When you say they would tell you this was to protect you from yourselves and each other, what did they tell you they were afraid you were going to do to yourself?
They were afraid that we were going to hurt each other. They were afraid that we were going to hurt ourselves. And they were afraid that we were insane, like we were mentally unstable.
And you say you remember your cage being red and green wood,
Yes, that's correct.
and you remember those bright colors. I mean, this is a picture
That
of
is
the
my cage.
That is your cage.
That's my cage.
You stayed in there how many hours a day?
24 hours.
So there were times you didn't come out of it at all. What
There
about
was.
what about going to the bathroom?
Going to the bathroom, some of us had to go in our cage.
Yeah. And were you the only child that was abused, or did you just get the worst of it?
I was the child that got the worst of the abuse
Why do you think that's true?
because Michael never liked me.
From the beginning.
Michael was always so aggressive with me. He would always hit me, punch me in my face, punch me in my stomach.
You were 2 when you got there.
Yes, I was 2 years old
What was this punishment for?
for no reason at all. They were brutal, crazy. They call us mentally insane. But in my eyes, they're mentally insane for what they've done to us.
I made a list of the alleged abuse that took place in this home. Obviously, we've talked about the kids were forced to stay in 30 by 40 by 40 stacked cages for hours or days at a time.
Correct.
There was one child that was eating wood from the cage because just trying to get by. You say one of the children had Down syndrome and had a sock forced down the throat.
Yes.
There was food deprivation. Do you remember being hungry most of the time, some of the time, all the time?
Mostly all the time. But it wasn't to the point to where like I was going to die.
What did you eat when you had something to eat? What did they feed you?
Peanut butter sandwiches.
You say there were times when you were hosed down in the winter. Talk about that.
Freezing cold. They would take a long hose. It had a long green hose on the side of the house, and they would hose each and one of us down for no apparent reason.
And you said you were held captive on this property. You weren't allowed to go to a neighbor's house or
No.
anywhere else.
If we were to go anywhere out of the area, they would hunt us down, find us, grab us up, take us back to our cages, beat us.
And you said you were dunked underwater and held underwater at
Yes.
times. Where did this happen? Was this
This
in a
happened
bathtub, a bucket of
Yeah.
water? Where did it happen?
Bathtub.
When you think about this today, does this come back to you as real as if it had happened yesterday?
When I think about it today, I just think like I was that kid and I'm strong, you know? It was crazy that I'm still here to this day, sitting right here in front of you, telling you my story.
There were times you thought that would never happen.
I never thought this would happen.
Have you seen any of your siblings since you were rescued?
No.
Y'all scattered at that point. They took you and
Yeah, we split apart.
these children were imprisoned, then they were rescued, spun off in the world, never to see each other again. We'll be right back. What Simon does not realize is that we tracked down his sibling, Abba, and he is about to get the surprise of his life.
My experience was very different from the rest of my siblings. I was emotionally abused. I got to leave the house with my mom, Sharon. I felt really guilty. I'm now starting to realize the magnitude of what really went on in that house. What my mom and dad, Michael and Sharon, did was beyond twisted and sick.
One of my siblings in that house was Abba. She would make me smile a lot. I haven't seen Abba since the day we were rescued. What I would love to say to Abba is, you're strong just like me. We both endured the unthinkable. We both survived. If I had the chance to see Abba, I would probably break down in tears.
Well, we've been talking with 18-year-old Simon, who survived a self-described house of horrors where he and his abused siblings were forced to sleep in cages. One of Simon's adopted siblings was a young girl, Abba, who he had not seen or heard from in over 10 years. We were able to find her. She's in college, wants to put all of this behind her, but she did have the strength, the time, and the courage to give us an interview on tape and talk to our field producers. So here's what she had to say.
I was the very first child, adopted by Michael and Sharon when I was a newborn. My experience was very different from the rest of my siblings. Although I was never physically abused, I was emotionally abused by witnessing their abuse. One of my sisters who had Down syndrome, I witnessed my parents shoving a sock down her throat. I just remember feeling scared, a little bit afraid. My brothers and sisters were kept in cages, and I was the only one that slept in a bed. I would even ask my parents if I could sleep in a cage because I wanted to be like the rest of my siblings. I got to leave the house with my mom, Sharon. She would take me with her to Walmart and stuff, out to eat. My siblings would always ask me, "Oh, Abba, you get treated better than us. Why is that?" And I never knew the answer why. I felt really guilty. One day, I think I was about 9 or 10, all these vans arriving at the house. So I was getting taken from the only parents that I had. I didn't understand what was going on. I would constantly cry and cry. I'm now starting to realize the magnitude of what really went on in that house. What my mom and dad, Michael and Sharon, did was beyond twisted and sick.
Well, what do you think about what you just heard?
I never really knew that she was the only one that slept on a bed. She is a very strong young woman.
You've got to miss siblings. You've got to miss those that
I think about it every day. Like, I miss my twin sister. I miss my brother. I miss all of them, really.
You don't have to miss Abba because she's here. Abba, come on out.
Abba, is that really you? Abba. Abba, is that you? I never thought I would ever see you. You're so tall, man. Abba, man.
Oh. Is this your chair?
You can sit next to him. You can sit next to him. You don't need to hide.
Wow, this is unreal. I can't believe it.
How's it feel to see Simon?
Oh, it feels great. I'm glad you're doing good.
Hey, we're strong.
They treated you differently than they did many of the other children, right?
Yes. For some reason, Sharon had always liked me the best out of everybody. I'm not sure why, but she took me on trips. She would sneak me food. She would do just stuff that my siblings would never get or would never get to do.
Did you wonder why you were in a bed and they were in a cage?
Yes, I always wondered why. I would literally ask them I want to be like my siblings. They're in a cage. They said it was for protection. So I'd be like, well, I want to be protected too. I want to stay safe too. So
What would they tell you?
they would tell me, no, you're a little different than them. You sleep in a normal bed.
How does it feel to see her after all these years?
It's intense. I can't believe that she's sitting right here in front of me. And like, we always used to get along. We always used to play.
We had the connection. We had the connection.
You remember them times? Yeah, you remember them times. We had some times. We had some times.
Yeah. So tell us who's who in this picture.
First one in the blue right there, that's Johnny.
That's Johnny. And sitting behind Johnny is Samson. That's Samson.
I was gonna let you figure it out.
Yeah. And then in the pink behind him is me. And sitting on my lap is Elijah. That's you cheesing.
Look at my smile. It's not like that no more. Look. I don't think it's like that no more.
And then on your lap, that's the two new babies that they had just gotten. I can't remember if that's River or Jordan. And then Sarah is holding the other one.
And you have no idea where they all are now?
No.
When we come back, we're going to talk some more about these parents and when they were arrested and why these people only got 2 years in prison. We'll be right back. How do you feel about them getting 2 years?
Totally unacceptable. You can't hide it. You're an animal, dude. You can't hide it.
In 2005, before their conviction, Michael and Sharon Gravel did an interview with Good Morning America where they tried to defend putting their children in cages. Take a look.
They're not cages.
They're not cages.
They are full-size twin beds, long enough for a 6-foot-plus man to lay down.
I built them specifically with the mattress in mind.
There are no locks. We didn't even lock our house at night.
What do you say about that?
It's all false, for sure.
So they're lying.
Yes.
That's all lies. And
Did you have a mattress?
I never had a mattress. I slept on wood.
Well, apparently the court didn't believe them, but somehow or another they wind up getting 2 years. How do you feel about them getting 2 years?
Totally unacceptable. These kids, you take kids in cages and then you call them beds? What type of person are you? Are you human?
Yeah. That looks pretty small to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, our producers reached out to both Sharon and Michael Gravel. We were told by a family member that Sharon Gravel was not interested in participating in this show.
Hope not.
We also exchanged emails with Michael, who declined appearing on the show and now goes by another name. He still insists that he's done nothing wrong. Just says, no, nothing was wrong. This was all taken out of context, mischaracterized. Are you surprised by that?
That's just funny to me. Because he's trying to disguise himself, but you can't hide it. You're an animal, dude. You can't hide it. You can't hide it.
And why do you think they had the alarms on?
Just in case if we were to come out of the cages, if we were to break out, because...
Now, these were coded alarms.
Yes.
They would have a code. They would set these
Yes.
alarms, right? They'd put you in and then set the alarm.
Yes.
Arm
Correct.
it, hit set, and then if anything happened where you pushed the door open, jarred it or anything,
It would go
this
off.
would go off and it would scream inside and outside the house, right?
Yep.
Did that ever happen? Did you ever trip your alarm?
Yes, I did one time.
And what happened?
They came upstairs. They saw it was my alarm because they can hear it. They threw me out of my cage. They beat me, and they put me back in my cage.
And you say you remember Michael always paddling him with a board.
Yeah.
Do you know what triggered it? Why he would do it?
No, probably he was always real hyper when he was younger. And Michael, I don't know why, but Michael, he didn't get along with the boys in the house for some reason. He always had it for Michael and
He
for,
hated me.
He just had something out for them. I think it's because like kids would try to fight back sometimes, and he didn't like that.
When you first left, these were the only parents you had known, even though, as you look back on it now, you see the gravity of what took place. At the time, you felt like you were being taken away from the only home you had known, right? Mm-hmm. How do you feel towards those two now, knowing what you now know?
Oh, I know that they were not the ideal parents. That's not any type of way that you should treat kids.
Do you feel guilt about that?
Yes, I feel guilt because I always wondered why. Like, why was I treated better than them? I never really understood why.
Why did it take so long for them to get caught?
Maybe because people, like, nobody saw it happen. Like, nobody saw, like, what was going on until somebody said something.
Yeah.
Do you know how they ultimately did get caught?
I heard it was one of my siblings. The older brother or sister had called.
Okay. All right, well, we're going to talk more about how this thing actually all came crashing down right after the break. We have yet another surprise. What Simon and Abba do not realize is that we also tracked down the person who reported the abuse, which then helped with their rescue. They will meet for the first time ever after the break.
One day I was sent to meet Michael and Sharon Gravel. Sharon referred to all the 11 children as monkeys. Michael looked me right dead in the eyes and said, "I consider myself to be Moses, leading these children to the promised land." I never saw the cages that day, but I knew what was going on.
Closed captioning provided by...
When it comes to the day we were rescued, I have no idea who contacted them, who called. I have no idea.
I always wondered, like, who knew what was going on the whole time and who knew that we were in them cages. Somebody knew that we were being tortured and abused. I would love to know who it is.
I feel like if someone wouldn't have tipped them off, then my life would be drastically different than it is today.
If I ever had the opportunity to speak to whoever helped us out, I would tell them, "You saved my life."
So how did this nightmare finally come to an end for them? Well, as it turns out, there was a man who met with the Gravels to discuss assisting them with their children. But when he arrived at the home, he discovered what he described as unspeakable abuse. Well, let me tell you, it took some digging on our part, as this story is over a decade old. But we were able to track down the man who reported the Gravels.
One day I was sent to meet Michael and Sharon Gravel. The Gravels were looking for someone to be there on either Saturday or Sunday most of the day so they could go out as a couple. The only time I ever saw the kids was when I first came into the house. Sharon sternly instructed all the children to go outside. A little later, one of the boys came to the screen door crying, holding himself. Sharon said, "No, you little monkey, you should have gone to the bathroom before you went outside." He came in the house and went to the bathroom, and when he was done, he came out and she said, "Go upstairs and lock yourself in your cage until tomorrow afternoon." That's the first time I ever heard the word cage. Sharon referred to all the 11 children as monkeys. I thought that it was racist. I was appalled. Michael looked me right dead in the eyes and said, "I consider myself to be Moses, leading these children to the promised land." Michael explained to me outside that sometimes the kids try to get out of their cages, and he pointed at the speakers that were on the outside of the house. He told me the doors on the cages were hooked up to the sirens so that they would know when they were trying to get out. He told me a good way to look at the kids to see if they are trying to get out is their fingers will be cut from trying to pry the chicken wire away from the wood. When Michael said that to me, I thought these children are being raised by monsters. I felt that they were treating these kids as less than animals. I never saw the cages that day, but after Michael and Sharon both mentioned and described them to me, I knew what was going on. Knowing how these children are being abused in this house, it was very hard for me to leave. I got in my car and I was driving away from those kids, and I had to pull over to the side of the road, and I literally sobbed for their welfare. I immediately told my bosses at the caregiving company what I had witnessed. I got called into a meeting with Child Protective Services. They had me write down everything I saw and everything I witnessed. Unfortunately, nothing happened. There was absolute silence. I never stopped thinking about those kids. 3 years passed before I got a call from Child Protective Services. The social worker found the notes that I had written at the meeting that we had had 3 years prior, and the next time I knew anything at all, Michael and Sharon had been arrested. Sharon and Michael received 2 years behind bars. I wish that they would have been put away for life. I don't personally know the kids. I don't think they know who I am. But what I want them to know is I love each and every one of them, and I'm happy if they're happy.
Well, that's the man. That's the man that saw, that's the man that heard, that's the man that picked up the phone and blew the whistle on this whole deal. What do you think about what he had to say?
If he was here right now, I would gladly give him the biggest hug ever. Tell him that I love him. You saved my life. You know, you saved her life, because who knows what they could have done to her.
Well, he told us the same thing. He said if he ever got to meet the two of you, he would give you a big hug too. So let's let that happen. Carlisle, come on out.
This is a real man right here.
But for you doing what you did, one or both of these young people might not be here today. How does it feel to see these two young people now?
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm so proud of you guys.
The pictures left a real important element out that you couldn't experience if you didn't walk through that front door. What was it? Closed captioning provided by Dick Sutherland was the sheriff of Huron County back in 2005. He was among the first responders to the Gravel home. He joins us via Polycom right now. Dick, thank you so much for joining us.
It's entirely my pleasure.
Dick, you were one of the first people to respond to this home. How was this case different from others that you have seen and been involved in?
It really touched me, and I'm excuse me, I'm having a hard time just seeing these guys.
Did the Gravels, I mean, you were around them, you saw them that day, you saw them in trial, you've heard them speak on GMA. Did you ever see any indication that they had any appreciation for the gravity of what they had done, or that they had done anything wrong?
They were in total denial. They had no clue. But I always felt that if these guys were as smart as they were, not treating the kids the way they did, but trying to make money off of the children, they knew what they were doing. And they knew that it was not right.
This is what Michael had to say in court.
I am not this guilty criminal who took his children, as the state wants you to believe, locked them in cages, had them stacked on top of each other, didn't feed them properly, did all these terrible things. I am not that person.
Well, you know, I spent most of my professional career as a jury consultant, and it sounds to me like he just made a pretty damn good closing argument for the prosecution. That's exactly what he did, is it not?
Exactly.
The pictures show the visuals, but it left a real important element out that you couldn't experience if you didn't walk through that front door. What was it?
Well, the first thing that hit me going into the Gravel residence was the odor of urine. And it got worse as you got farther into the house. You get upstairs where the cages were, and it was just, you cannot imagine.
You know, we have a series that we're doing here at the Dr. Phil Show all this season that we call Behind the Badge. And what we're trying to do is remind people that there are real human beings that wear the badge, that wear the blue, that stand in the gap between us and these bad elements in society. And when you walked through that door and saw these children, you weren't a cop, you weren't a sheriff, you were a father and a man and a human being, and this touched you a lot, did it not?
Oh, it most definitely did. When we walked into that place and I saw all these children and how they interacted with each other, they protected themselves, and then going inside and then seeing what they put up with. And we have no idea what they went through because we didn't lead those kind of lives. And those children should be commended for living as strong as they have done. And looking forward to the future.
We're going to take a break. Anxiety, flashbacks, fear of running into their abusers. We're going to talk about how Ava and Simon can work through these fears and move on after the break.
I know what I went through has made a huge impact on my life. I stutter a lot, and I feel like that's because they were never taught us language.
I have trust issues. I definitely need closure, and I need a lot of healing around this.
I feel like nobody ever really loves me. I feel like I'm the only man walking this earth sometimes.
Your experience is right on the slate of who you are, and what I think people don't understand is that when you go through these kind of things, it creates wounds to what I call our psychological skin. And both of you have had your psychological skin burned in a really, really bad way. And if you don't ever deal with that, you don't know when it's going to pop back up. And you want to do what with your life?
My goals are, I want to go to Start State College. I want to get my master's degrees in social working, and I want to become a social worker. I want to help kids that had similar struggles.
Right.
I want to tell these kids that I've been through it. I was hurt. I was abused. But look, you can get through it. I want to tell kids, never give up. Keep going.
Here's the thing I say to both of you. What you need to make sure you do is that you fully 100% take your power back from this experience, that you fully 100% heal those wounds, and that you don't let things fester within inside you. And there is very specialized care that's available for people that are survivors of the kind of abuse and violation that you've been through. And I can tell you that for folks that don't subject themselves to that, for people that don't go through, do that inventory, heal those wounds, it can pop up at the worst possible times. And whether it's in the form of post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety or depression, and it can rear its head when you get in a situation of intimacy, or it's time to have a child or get close to someone. The time to do that work is now. And one of the things that I want to make available to both of you is I want to hand select a very specifically skilled therapist for each one of you locally where you are that can sit down with you and for whatever time it takes to work on a stepwise basis at your pace and do that psychological inventory and see if you have unfinished emotional business about what has happened with you to make sure that you're where you need to be. Fair enough? All right. There is someone who stood in the gap for Abba, and I want to say something to him next. Plus, there is someone I want Simon to meet as well. We'll be right back. Closed captioning provided by Abba's adoptive father, Henry, who she has lived with since the age of 9 after she left the Gravels, is here also. And Henry, thank you so much for what you have done. This man has made a difference in your life, has he not?
Yes.
And this was not an easy hill to climb, was it?
Not at all, no. She came to us at age 9, and even after she came to us for the first 2 years, she needed to understand that she trusted us. And she would play a game called Trust. And she would walk up in front of us, and we could be sitting in a living room chair or at a dining room table chair, and she'd fall back into our arms and see if we would catch her. And we always did.
Well, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, seriously. And we have a little surprise for Simon as well. I've heard him, and he said it today, that he really wants to attend college and someday become a social worker. He actually mentioned specifically Stark State College. So I want to welcome via Polycom Para Jones, the president of Stark State College. Dr. Jones, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Phil. First of all, Simon, I want to tell you, you are a strong man. You're a hero. And as Dr. Phil says, you have power. We also know that education is power. And so we're so excited that you want to come to Stark State College. We're a community college. We have the programs you're interested in. And what I love is that you have a dream and a vision of what you want to become. And we can help you get there. I want you to come to Stark State so you can get your Stark State jacket. Okay. And then, Simon, we're going to connect you with counselors, advisors. We're going to talk about our programs in social work, counseling, and how we can bridge from high school to college.
I'm going to make it happen.
Dr. Phil, thank you so much for introducing us to Simon.
And Dr. Jones, to be very clear, when you're talking about these counselors and all of this, you're going to get with Simon, and you're going to make this happen. If he needs courses, you're going to make sure that those get done, and you're going to make sure that he can get through to the end of this curriculum, and you're going to take care of the financial needs of this so he's not burdened with that. When he gets out of there, he will be debt-free.
Yes,
Okay, I'm sorry we couldn't hear you.
So, Simon, we've got an appointment, right? You're going to come to my office. We're going to get started.
I ain't never late.
All right.
I ain't never late.
Thank you. I want to thank my guests today, especially Stark State College President Dr. Para Jones, former Sheriff Dick Sutherland. Mr. Carlisle, thank you. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate it. We will see you all next time. Thank you so much.